There is a particular kind of underestimation that the entertainment industry applies to women who are good at comedy. The underestimation works like this. The woman is funny, the woman is charming, the woman is clearly intelligent. The timing proves the intelligence. The timing always proves the intelligence. But the intelligence is categorized as a supporting quality rather than the central one, as the thing that makes the performance work rather than the thing the performance is about, as the seasoning rather than the dish. The woman is the perfect wife. The woman is the ideal partner. The woman is the one who makes the man look good. Myrna Loy spent the first decade of her career being underestimated in one direction and the second decade being underestimated in another. And she navigated both with the specific combination of patience and stubbornness of a woman who knew exactly what she was and was willing to wait for the world to figure it out. Myrna Adele Williams was born on August 2, 1905, in Radersburg, Montana, the daughter of a state legislator who died when she was 13, and whose death moved the family to Los Angeles, where Myrna found her way into the entertainment industry through dance and through the specific luck of being in the right city at the right time, with the right face for the camera. The face was unusual in the way that the most interesting faces are unusual, not conventionally beautiful in the studio-approved sense, but specific and expressive, and possessed of a quality of intelligence that the camera transmitted immediately and that the audience received as trustworthiness. The freckles were part of it. The slightly tilted eyes were part of it. The sense of a person who was entirely present and entirely engaged was all of it. The studios did not know what to do with her. This is the consistent early career experience of performers whose qualities do not fit the available categories, and the studio system's response was to force the category rather than expand it. Myrna Loy in the late 1920s and early 1930s was cast repeatedly as exotic temptresses, Asian villains, mysterious Orientals, the dangerous foreign other, because the freckles and the slightly tilted eyes read as ethnically ambiguous on the silent and early sound screen, and because the studios had a category for ethnically ambiguous women, and it was the category of the exotic threat. She played these roles with professional competence and private frustration, understanding that the work was the work, and that the category was not permanent, but that the exit from it would require either a director of unusual perception or a piece of luck unusual enough to break the pattern. The luck and the perception arrived together in 1934, when MGM cast her opposite William Powell in The Thin Man, a decision made partly by accident and partly by the intuition of a studio that had two contract players who had not yet found their ideal material and who found it, simultaneously, in the same film. The chemistry between Powell and Loy was not manufactured. It was discovered, the specific, warm, intellectually matched quality of two performers who thought at the same speed and who trusted each other enough to play the pauses and the silences as well as the lines. Nora Charles was not a wife who stood behind her husband. She was a partner who stood beside him, who was as witty as he was, as perceptive as he was, as capable of solving the mystery as he was, and who treated the marriage as a collaboration between equals rather than a hierarchy with a designated leader. The audience recognized something in this that they had not previously been offered with such completeness. Not the screwball comedy heroine, who was funny but ultimately needed rescuing. Not the dramatic heroine, who was strong but ultimately defined by her suffering. A woman who was simply, fully, unreservedly, in the context of a loving and equal partnership, herself. The Thin Man was a sensation. 5 sequels followed across the next 14 years. Fans voted Myrna Loy the Queen of Hollywood in a poll that also named Clark Gable its king, which is the appropriate pairing for a woman who was the equal of any man in the industry and knew it. Adolf Hitler placed her on his personal blacklist. This biographical fact requires no embellishment and receives none. The dictator of Nazi Germany, who was in the process of building the apparatus of the Holocaust, considered Myrna Loy sufficiently dangerous to his project to include her on the list of people he found threatening. She had been outspoken against the Nazi regime at a time when outspokenness on the subject was not universal in Hollywood, and when the economic interests of the studios in the German market created incentives for silence that some people chose to honor. She did not honor them. She said what she thought, clearly and publicly, and Hitler noticed. When the war came, she stopped making films, not reduced her output, not took selective roles, stopped. She worked full-time for the Red Cross, doing the unglamorous organizational work of wartime charity with the complete commitment of someone who has decided that the present situation is more important than her career and who means the decision rather than performing it. She was one of the most famous women in America. She spent the war years at a desk rather than in front of a camera, because that was where the work was. After the war, she became the first Hollywood star to work for UNESCO, the United Nations educational, scientific, and cultural organization, bringing to the work of international human rights the same intelligence and the same commitment she had brought to everything else. She traveled. She testified before Congress on housing discrimination, making the specific, detailed, evidence-based argument that the subject required, rather than the emotional appeal that her celebrity might have made available and easier. She understood that the serious work required serious engagement rather than the star's shortcut of lending a name to a cause. She returned to films when the films were interesting enough to return to. The Best Years of Our Lives in 1946, in which she played the wife of Frederick March's returning veteran with a warmth and a complexity that matched his performance at every turn. Lonely Hearts in 1958. The End in 1978. She was never again the box office phenomenon of the Thin Man years, and she did not appear to require it. She had found, in the decades of the war work and the UNESCO work and the congressional testimony, a relationship with her own significance that the box office receipts had never quite provided. She never received a competitive Academy Award nomination. The Academy gave her an honorary Oscar in 1991, at the age of 85, in recognition of a career and a life that the regular nomination process had somehow managed to overlook. She accepted it with the graciousness of a woman who had long since stopped measuring her worth by the opinions of an industry that had initially cast her as an exotic villain because it didn't know what to do with freckles. She died on December 14th, 1993, in New York City, at the age of 88. She had been, across a life of genuine breadth and genuine consequence, exactly what the fan poll had called her. The Queen of Hollywood, in the sense that matters, which is not the sense of the most famous, but the sense of the most worthy of the crown. A woman who used what she had been given with intelligence and conscience and the specific kind of grace that is not performed, but earned, through decades of choosing the harder thing when the easier thing was available. Hitler blacklisted her. The United Nations honored her. The audience never forgot her. The perfect wife was never anyone's sidekick. She was always the whole story.